Legalizing marijuana is big talk across the country, and it's no different here in Arizona. This week, Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery is here to talk about it. Welcome to the Mike Broomhead Show.
Well, I got a message, I got a song. Can I get a witness? Tell me what's going on. I show the people I've been away.
Welcome to the AZTV 7 studios. It's the Mike Broomhead Show. A lot coming up. Of course, we've got Broomhead's Best. We've got to talk about the Territorial Cup. We're going to have hashtag this. And Bill Montgomery joins us this week to talk about legalization of marijuana. But we start every week off with something we call the sweep. All right, first up, we have to talk about the attacks in Paris, France. We know about 8 people gunning down hundreds, murders. We also have people that have been injured in these attacks. Since then, France has done over 300 raids, a state of emergency in France, and now we know that the mastermind of the attacks is dead. They raided an apartment and a church, and in that apartment there was a woman that was a suicide bomber, which is very significant. We've been looking at men, young men between the ages of 16 and 40 have been about the age of most of the suicide bombers. This was a woman. These 9 people were ready to go out on another attack. When the apartment was raided, the French people, the French police, when they went in for the raid, over 5,000 bullets fired. But what we do know is this woman armed with a suicide belt detonated it, killing herself, and we believe also killing the man who was the mastermind behind these attacks. He had been hit, and it's such a gruesome thing to say, but his body was so damaged they couldn't visually identify him. They did it by fingerprints, but now we know the mastermind is dead. So think about this. In less than a week after the attack, the country of France arrested over 100 people. They found cash, bulletproof vests, guns, even a rocket launcher. They found information on cell phones with encrypted messages that led them to 9 people that were on their way to commit another attack, another act of terrorism within the country of France. So now the question is, what the French people doing, the state of emergency, they want the extension to go further with this, and now you add into the mix this. The French president says they are going to honor the refugees. They are going to honor 30,000 more refugees over the year. Are the French people right in doing that? And I can't talk about these attacks without talking about our own John Kerry. Now, when I say this is quite possibly the dumbest thing that John Kerry has ever said as Secretary of State, that's quite an accomplishment because he said some stupid things. After the Charlie Hebdo attacks, we waited 2 weeks as a country because John Kerry is our chief diplomat. 2 weeks before we did or said anything for the French people. Our oldest ally in the world are the French. As a nation, it was the French that helped us during the Revolution. Our oldest ally gave us the Statue of Liberty. 2 weeks after the Charlie Hebdo attacks, what did we do as a nation? John Kerry takes James Taylor to France to sing You Got a Friend. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a Saturday Night Live skit the first time I saw it. He topped it. He goes to France, he meets with the president of France, and when he's done, he speaks to the world in Paris. And he says, at least Charlie Hebdo had some rationale to it. Then he corrected himself and said, they were angry about something specific, as if murdering all those people, including the execution of a police officer at point-blank range, was reason enough to commit those acts, saying this one was worse because they were randomized attacks against people. So congratulations, Secretary Kerry. You've done it again. You've outdone yourself in stupidity. I just think it's an embarrassment. He represents us to the entire world as a diplomat. More than half of the nation's governors are opposing the refugee crisis, bringing Syrian refugees into the country. Here's the problem. I agree wholeheartedly that we should be a safe harbor. The Statue of Liberty, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. We have been a safe harbor for war-torn countries and their refugees forever. We still consider the Cuban people refugees when they come here. They still can get status. It's called the wet foot, dry foot rule. If a Cuban citizen makes it to American soil, they can apply for and receive immediate asylum because they're escaping a communist country. I understand needing to have and help refugees. But when the president says we're going to accept 10,000 refugees next year, we keep hearing about, when they use the phrase robust vetting process, whenever you hear someone in government use the word robust, they're lying. It's just a big word to say that we're doing a lot of things. They won't tell us what. They won't make the American people feel better. Representative Pete King from New York said there is no vetting process. We have no data to vet it against. They say who they are, and we have to believe them. Just a couple of things. The Tsarnaev brothers, the two brothers that did the attacks at the Boston Marathon, were refugees to this country. We know that one of the people, at least one of the 8 in France, was on the rescue boats and a refugee into France. I'm not saying that the vast majority of people aren't good. I believe they are. I believe they're people from a war-torn country. But we as a nation have got to protect our citizens first and fix the program before we just blindly allow in all these refugees. Now something local. A House measure to stop the West Valley Casino. The Tohono O'odham Nation is opening it's ready to open next month, that casino in the West Valley in Glendale, about 91st Avenue and Northern is where it's located. It's ready to open. Well, the federal government, it was Trent Franks of Arizona, tried to run a bill to outlaw it. That did not pass, which is one more legal hurdle that the tribe has overcome and been successful. Also locally, a reduction in the bail for the accused freeway shooter. Leslie Allen Merritt Jr. had $1 million in bond set. A judge now has lowered that to $150,000. His lawyer said it doesn't matter. He doesn't have that money either. He's got an alibi for every single incident, and that he should be set free on his own recognizance to face trial. I don't know if that's the case, but it's been reduced to $150,000. This week, a big surprise to some, but Charlie Sheen, the great actor, remember Winning? It was Tiger's Blood and Adonis DNA. He has come out as HIV positive. He said he paid people in his inner circle over $10 million to keep it secret. Diagnosed 4 years ago, said he's had unprotected sex with 2 women since he was diagnosed. Both of them were aware, and both of them under his doctor's care. Other women have come out and said, absolutely not true. His ex-girlfriend said she lived with him for a year, that they were having sex for a year. He never told her that he was HIV positive. So what's the truth? We don't know, but now we do know Charlie Sheen is HIV positive. Coming up in a moment, Bill Montgomery joins me, the Maricopa County attorney. He is a brilliant man, and he has got a lot to say about the legalization of marijuana in Arizona. He joins me in a few minutes. It's the Mike Broomhead Show here at AZTV 7. Don't go away.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel, Arizona Christian University, and Sanderson Ford.
All right, welcome back. It's the Mike Broomhead Show, and this week our guest is Bill Montgomery, the Maricopa County attorney. First of all, Mr. Montgomery, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
A lot of difficult things in your office. We've talked about a lot of things that are happening, and marijuana is one of the topics that's big nationally. Legalization across the country, decriminalization. We hear the Democrat candidates for president saying they want a pathway to legalization. The way this thing is being written in Arizona, what do you think?
Well, we're going to have another mess, and it's going to be a field day for lawyers. There are several competing provisions within the initiative itself. In one place, it purports to say that employers can have a drug-free workplace, and yet in another section, it purports to take away the ability for an employer to do anything just because someone has marijuana in their system. It's also rather peculiar that the people who are going to have the first opportunity to get retail licenses are only those who currently run a medical marijuana dispensary. And after the first year, so for the first year, they're the only ones who can apply for a retail license, which makes it a captive market and effectively a monopoly for them. After that, if people want to get a retail license, they're going to be restricted on the amount they can sell until they can demonstrate that they're making an 85% profit, which means basically that if you're not currently operating a medical marijuana dispensary, your ability to get a license and then be able to expand your operation, which I'm opposed to anyways, but your ability to expand it is going to be limited. So we have an initiative that's been written by dispensary owners to benefit dispensary owners and keep everybody else out of the market. That's an abuse of the initiative process.
Argument's always been, you legalize it, you tax it, money into the state coffers, and then it takes away one segment of the violence and the crime associated with the dealing of drugs. Is that factual?
No, and it's one of the myths that keeps getting presented to the public. Colorado is proving that's not true. And any tax dollars initially go to pay for a marijuana commission and then a new Department of Marijuana, and then whatever's left over can be used for education or something else. And when you figure that our state budget for what we're able to do directly is about $9 billion, the 10, maybe 20 at best million that would be left over, that's a mere pittance. So again, and you got to keep in mind, drug dealers like to misrepresent their positions because they want you to take their products and then get your money. This whole idea that we're going to make money for Arizona and it's all going to be good for the children is ridiculous.
I know obviously no one's legalizing heroin, but we talked off the air before we started about the heroin problem and the trafficking in Arizona. What's happening?
Well, just in the last week or two, the Office of National Drug Control Policy, which is in the White House, released some statistics about heroin production out of Mexico. And from 2013 to 2014, heroin production increased 62%, from about 26 metric tons to over 46. That is huge. And it makes sense that there was more coming in, or they were producing more, because we saw more come into Arizona. Over a one-year period, we saw the amount that was seized at ports of entry go from about 460 pounds to over 720 pounds. And then within Arizona, during that same time frame, 2013 to 2014, we saw the number of cases we charged in Maricopa County alone on heroin-related matters go from roughly 900 to over 1,400. So that's about a 50% increase there.
How big of a tax is it on your office? How taxing is it in your office when you see an increase like this in the cases? It's taken away from other crimes and it really taxes the resources, right? Well,
correct. I mean, we've seen now for narcotic drug possession cases, so that includes cocaine and heroin, over 60% of our cases now are heroin possession. And we've seen a 25% increase in the number of cases where we're trying to offer diversion or deferred prosecution for heroin substance abuse treatment go up 25%. But we're also seeing the impact in other areas. We've started to see large organized crime cases where middlemen are going out and recruiting heroin addicts to go into stores and steal items in large quantities. Deodorant, baby formula, shaving cream. And then the middlemen take those products and sell them to a broker. And then that broker will sell for pennies on the dollar those items to swap meets, flea markets, neighborhood groceries. But the middlemen are recruiting heroin addicts to do the thefts. And then they're paying them either in just enough heroin for the next fix or just enough money for them to go get their next fix to make the addicts keep coming back. And Mike, in our community, those heroin addicts are our walking dead. They're people who are in deep need of treatment, and they're being abused and taken advantage of for criminal purposes.
Okay, I want to shift gears, if you don't mind. I want to ask you about the governor is one of the majority of governors in the country that wants to halt the Syrian refugee program. I want to get a legal opinion from you about what recourse our governor has, or the state's rights issue of how much recourse we have. So in a moment, we're going to be back. Bill Montgomery joins us. He's the Maricopa County attorney, and we're going to talk to him about the Syrian refugee program and a legal opinion on what the governor's options are in halting this program. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to the Mike Broomhead Show. My guest this week, Bill Montgomery, Maricopa County attorney. I was asking you about the Syrian refugee program because Governor Ducey has said he wants to halt the program, and they want answers. They want to know if we're going to take in refugees. What is this vetting process that they're saying is so good, which I think is a legitimate question. They had a conference call earlier this week in which Governor Ducey and 33 other governors were on the call. But if the president decides to not listen to the governors that are saying we don't want the refugees in our state, and let's say they places them in Arizona, what recourse does our governor have?
Well, I think other than using the bully pulpit of the governor's office on behalf of the people of Arizona, which I support 100%, there are a lot of practical reasons and experiences that Arizona has had that justify this move. The federal administration can relocate people to federal property within the state of Arizona, and there are federal means by which the government could use that would allow them to be settled here. From practical terms, Governor Ducey's objection to this should raise legitimate issues where there should be coordination and collaboration between federal and state governments. Our problem in Arizona, though, is that this federal administration and the federal government in general, when we talk about border security issues, has not been willing to fully step up to the plate and be a good collaborative partner. And in this particular area, the president really should be listening to the fact that there are 34 governors acting on behalf of everybody that they serve, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, men, women, children, to take into account legitimate concerns and be able to address that in a responsible way. Instead, what I think we've seen is the president has wanted to shift this and keep it in a political arena, and probably because he doesn't want to have to deal with the practical, real concerns that Americans have, which would be the far better place for this to be. And let me illustrate it. We know, for us here in Arizona, to focus on Governor Ducey in particular, that we've had our own experience with Islamic extremists. 2 of the 9/11 hijackers were trained here within Arizona. We had 3 Arizona residents involved in one degree or another in a shooting in Texas in May of this year. We now know over the last week or so that Syrians have attempted to cross illegally into several different countries. Turkey, where there were 8 Islamic militants who tried to enter amidst other Syrian refugees. Honduras, where a group of Syrians who were using fake Greek passports were taken into custody. And just within the last couple of weeks, a group of Syrians who tried to enter into the U.S. through Laredo, Texas. So there is a legitimate concern in whether or not Syrian refugees are refugees, or are they ISIS militants trying to infiltrate into our country. And addressing that concern, I think, would be an appropriate thing for the Commander-in-Chief and the President of the United States to do.
But if he decides they're going to place them in federal property in Arizona, we have to abide by their legal status. So if they are placed in another state and they come to Arizona, there's really not much of a recourse because they're given legal status through the federal government, and the full faith and credit, we have to honor that.
Yeah, I think we would be stuck in that regard, and we can even think back to just last year with the resettlement of people who were crossing the border illegally, women and children. And we had some who were settled here in Arizona and Tucson, and some who were just dropped off at bus stops. And that does present a very significant issue for the state of Arizona in trying to provide legitimate accommodation to people who are objectively refugees. But at the same time, if the federal government will not share how this vetting process occurs, we can't identify areas where, in particular for Arizona, there may be holes in the system. And I know this administration likes to think that it knows everything and knows how to do everything well, but the practical experience in 50 different states might point out the need to do things differently in each one of those states.
We changed things after 9/11 of how we fly and how we travel. It makes sense now. We'd have to change how this program works because of what we now know of these infiltrators into the refugee camps. I always appreciate the legal opinion because I can guess, but you know the law. So, and I know Veterans Day has passed, but what year did you graduate from West Point?
I graduated in 1989.
We appreciate your service. So thank you for your service to the country and to the county. I think you're doing a great job in Maricopa County for what my opinion is worth. So thanks for being here.
I appreciate it very much, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be back here in a few minutes. Broomheads best and hashtag this, so don't go away. Don't go away because in 60 seconds we are going to have my 2 favorite parts of the week, Broomhead's best and hashtag this. That's coming up on the Mike Broomhead Show on AZTV 7.
The Mike Broomhead Show is brought to you in part by Cliff Castle Casino Hotel, Arizona Christian University, and Sanderson Ford.
All right, my favorite part of the week. The 2 elements in this every week, it's got to be Arizona and it's got to be really good. Well, what else could it be this week? It's the Territorial Cup. It's Broomhead's best. All right, Broomhead's best this week, the Territorial Cup. I've got to tell you, I moved to Arizona 20 years ago, so my college football affiliation is with the University of Miami. Although I love the football in Arizona and I've become a Pac-12 fan. The nice thing for me is I get to watch the best rivalry in the country, which I believe this is. The Territorial Cup, not only is it 90 years, but they really are arch rivals. This is fantastic. By the time you see this show, the game's going to be over. But when we tape it, the game hasn't been played yet. So everybody in the building, whether they're a Wildcat or a Sun Devil, talking about this game, which one is going to come back to work on Monday happy, and which one is going to be just waiting to get their hands on that cup next year. Either way, it's got to be Broomhead's best this week. It's the Territorial Cup, and congratulations to both schools for making this rivalry the best in the entire country. Next up, it's something that's burning up the internet, something that everyone is talking about. We call it #this. All right, here it is. The video that has been rocking the world from the Paris attacks. It is a harrowing scene from inside a security camera at one of the cafes in Paris. And you see gunfire everywhere and people scattering around this cafe. Then you see a gunman, and he stands over a woman outside, and his gun jams. So he runs away, and then you see this woman stand up and run away, given a second chance at life. The video is compelling. You can see the entire video at aztv.com. Go to the Mike Broomhead page. Next week, the Thanksgiving show, our friends from St. Vincent de Paul are going to be here with us. If you don't know a whole lot about St. Vincent de Paul, you are going to want to watch this show. They do great work here in Arizona. The largest commercial kitchen in the state of Arizona is at St. Vincent de Paul. This time of year, we are so thankful for what we have. I'm thankful they are here helping the families that are in need. Thanks to Bill Montgomery. We'll be back next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. God bless.
Get more of Mike Broomhead on Facebook, Twitter, and of course weekday mornings from 6 to 10 on News Talk 550 KFYI.